Well, in Barbados, we eat some things that you don't eat in the Bahamas. For instance, we eat the white sea egg. You know that creature? Little white thing with found in the bottom of the sea. You crack it and there's meat inside of it. Actually, it's a delicacy in Barbados. And if you harvest it out of season, you're taken before the court. The flying fish is another delicacy. I know in some countries people eat the shark. People eat shark in Barbados. I don't know if they still do. I mean, everybody has become sophisticated now, and they don't want to eat this and they don't want to eat that. But when I was a boy, they ate shark in Barbados. There is a Barbadian delicacy called cuckoo. Anybody here know it? What a beautiful okra and cornmeal when you got that stuff fixed up together and you get a good gravy with some fish, you'll want more cuckoo. So those are some of the things that I grew up on as a boy. My father was a farmer and a fisherman. And so milk was one of the things that I had to drink daily. And so I haven't had a pint of milk since I was 14 years old. I stopped drinking milk. I drank too much milk as a boy. I don't drink milk. Those are some of the delicacies that I had as a boy. Then I grew up in the parish of St. Philip on the sea coast. So we went to the sea daily. I noticed in Hawaii, they take long poles. We took the center of the cactus. I don't know if you know the cactus that grow 8, 10, 14 feet tall. You cut that, that is a floating object. So each boy has a cactus on his pole, on his shoulder. We head for the sea and we swim out to the ocean. I never encountered a shark. I don't know where they lived in those days. Now they're biting everybody they could. But no shark ever troubled us. So we had wonderful boyhood days, swimming. In fact, as a child, I had bronchitis. And my mother had a cutout vest, like a singlet that you wear, but out of flannel. And when I became about 9 or 10 years old, I took that thing off and tell her I'm not wearing this any longer. And I went to the sea and I just healed myself. I'm 90 years old, I don't have bronchitis anymore. So I grew up. And then one day, I was going with my mother to Bridgetown, which is the capital of Barbados. And I saw this building. It's a big, long building, like from here to the first building over in the schoolyard. And I said to my mother, what is that building? That is most imposing. And she said, that's a school, that's a high school. Would you like to go there? Now, in my mother's day, their bank, those women who worked, their bank was carried in a little sack under their apron. That's where her bank was. She said, would you like to go there? I said, I'd like to go there. I don't know why I wanted to go there, simply because I saw this prestigious looking building. She said, I'll send you there. So I went to that high school, Combermere. It's called Combermere. I think there's a Combermere boy who was a minister in this church. I don't know where he is now. I tried to locate him, but I never could get him. But he was a young pastor in this Adventist church in your conference. And then I went to another high school called the high school in St. Philip. And that was the beginning of my education. But the better part of my education was reaped from the Barbados Public Library. The plantation owners in Barbados brought their books from England, opened a library, and put the black people in Barbados to teach their children while they stay in the cane fields. That is why the Barbadian young people became educated early and educated their children while they educate the white man children whose house they lived in. So we had an awful time trying to get a good education, reading. And all young people, whether in this conference or otherwise, should involve themselves in the library, the libraries of the church, the public library, and any book they can put their hand on. Read. That's your education.
Okay, let's talk about the favorite. Yeah, I really don't need it. Every time when Brother Keith Mason talks, I stand still because he was one of my bosses when I was a police officer. And when they fired me, he was one who was trying to save me. And my uncle fired me. My uncle was B.K. Barnamy. And when my uncle was Keith Mason was trying to save me because he saw something in me that the rest of the senior officers didn't see. Nonetheless, it didn't work, but I honor him. So let's talk about the favorite food. Now, if you go to Cat Island, you're going to eat some wilks. You're going to eat some curds. You mix them together. That's better than tongue salad. That tastes better than tongue salad. And if your grandfather owned a field like my grandfather did, watermelon was the thing. We ate watermelon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now here's my favorite thing: grits. Now, if you want your grits, you got to work for it. Because the mill is in the back of the house, in the kitchen, and you got to grind that first. If you don't grind that in the mill, you ain't gonna eat. So my grandfather would make sure you put the corn in the mill, you grind it, then he will cook for you afterwards. But if you don't grind that corn, so what's my favorite? It's okra and grits, right? And with steamed octopus or steamed stingray. Yes, that's what we eat. And it's a stand on the dock and get out and just spare the stingray and put him up when he swim under the dock. That tastes good. All right. So now in Nassau, I don't know how these children say they're hungry and starving. Because there's fruits always in season. And we ate whatever fruit was in season. Whatever tree was bearing, you go to your neighbor and say, could I get some cocoa plum, please? Could I get some plum, please? Could I get some juju, please? And then the exciting thing about being a boy was to be able to jump on your bicycle and ride down the airport road and pick them sweet, juicy cocoa plum. Anybody know about that? Yeah, see, I don't know they put up all the trees now because I drive down the other day, but I'll tell you where some is, on the dock, at the port. I just been chief some there yesterday. Sweet cocoa plum. And so, but those are the things as young boys we grew up eating. And then the other thing, I don't know, Brother Neil, you remember this, but shooting the chimney. The chimney only this small. But when you shoot that down with a slingshot, you put that over the fire, and you cook that yourself in the little tin can, right. And that share between 5, 6 us. That same little chimney share between. That's what we ate as little boys, and that was exciting.
Yes.
Okay, well,
for me, I can make sure I state this now. I did not grow up Adventist. So you all got to understand that. And talk about grits, yes. Love grits. My father was he teach my mother how to cook peas and rice, and I love peas and rice and pork chop. That's what I grew up on. I could eat that 3 times a day. And when I got old enough, I would cook for me and my dog. My sisters and brothers couldn't get none of that food. I cooking food. Back then, there wasn't no dog food to buy. And I love my dog, Zip. I actually used to sneak him inside in the night when everybody gone to sleep. So he sleep in the room with me. But I used to cook for me and my dog. Also, one of the reasons I learned to cook very early because I was always hungry. 3 times a day wasn't cutting it for me. So how even you talk about all the fruits? My grandfather had an orchard in Fox Hill, and thank God for that, because the juju, the canep, the cocoa plum, the tamarind, the dilly, the mango, scarlet plum, gooseberry, whatever. Thank God for those things, because 3 meals a day wasn't cutting it for me. But I enjoyed being a child and all the foods. And yes, as I say, I grew up enjoying conch salad and loving crab soup and all those things. I grew up as a regular Bahamian, and I thank God for it. And even after my dad died, things was rough. So after that, you see plenty corned beef, because that's what mommy could afford, and plenty sardine. Those are the things I grew up on, and I thank God for that.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to be able to impress you because, all right. In my growing up, I never lacked what I needed. And I don't know anything about wants. Okay. So I always had what I needed, but I don't know anything about wants. But in that modest place that I grew up in, 21 Crooked Island Street, it is amazing how many things that grew in that yard. Some of my treasured memories is picking spinach off the back fence. Dill seed we had in the yard. Coconut, pears, okra, American cherries, so many other things that that I was able to benefit right from the yard. Then my father used to sell fish. I wonder if you know about Mr. Campbell, the fish man. Okay, that's another name mix up. They used to think my name was Ron Campbell because they used to call my father Mr. Campbell. I know, you know that, man. Okay. But that's okay. That's all right. So dad used to bring home fish of all types. So I grew up eating all type of fish, all type of seafood and what have you. The most shocking memories was eating turtle, which of course I'm sure some of y'all like turtle and stuff like that. Yeah, but and as the gentleman was speaking, and as we're wrapping this segment up, isn't it interesting? We all predate fast food, McDonald's and all that other kind of stuff. So I remember growing up, going home to eat my steamed chicken and peas and rice, and I used to see this thing called McDonald's. McDonald's, what that is? I say one day I can go there. I used to see KFC and say one day I can go there. But after going through all of this life and what have you, and we hear about the deleterious effects of fast food and what have you, we could look back and see what a blessing our indigenous food is to us.
Yes, indeed. As a health conscious individual, I totally agree that eating from the yard is the best way to go. Now, growing up, what was your mode of transportation? And do you remember, can you recall what was it like moving between New Providence and the Out Islands, as it is known, now called the Family Islands?
Well, I like to take that one because, first of all, your transportation was taxi 11. That was, you walk to school, you walk from school, you take off your good shoes if it rained, because that can't get wet, because you got to wear it on Sunday for church service. So wherever we went, we walked. If we went to church, you walked and walked back home. You go to school, you walked. You go to the shop. We had no, my mother couldn't drive, and she's 91 now, definitely can't drive. All right. Now, the exciting thing about traveling from Nassau to Cat Island was riding the mail boat. I've been on 2 mail boats, one burned down, one sink, and I still here. That means that God didn't want me to go anywhere. When the John Walker sink, I was on it. All right. But it was an exciting time to get on that mail boat and ride that 10-hour ride from Nassau to Cat Island, and then to go through the Galileo Cut. Because when you go through the Galileo Cut is similar to the Bermuda Triangle. You just don't disappear. But it's very, very rough there. All right? And that's where the true test of boyhood and the manhood came into play. All the boys on the boat would be waiting to see who can puke first, who is going to vomit first. Because once you get through the Galileo Cut, there will be some puking and there will be some vomiting. And so all the young men, we used to get on the deck, on the boat, and we watching each other to see who can bring up what. So the trick then was don't eat until after you get through the Galileo Cut. Then you go to the gallery and get some food. But that was one of the exciting times for us young men. I had a cousin who had one hand, and we called him Nuck, and he was an A1 engineer. So every time a boat stuck or a boat broke down in there, he would actually dive overboard and fix that engine. And sometimes I had the opportunity to dive over with him and hold his tools for him as he was fixing. Now, I never learned to fix the engine. I was always a good tool holder. But that was an exciting time for us to ride that mail boat, that 10-hour ride to Cat Island, and then back, because you had time to go with your friends. And now they do it now with regatta and those sort of things. But I don't do it no more. Like Brother Mason said, I had enough of it when I was a child.
Get me out of the way so you can get on to the interesting stories. Okay, mode of transportation, like John already said, foot. I mean, here's the truth of the matter. Catching jitney was a luxury. And jitney was what, 25 cents? Okay, yeah. All right, so I didn't catch jitney until really what? When I was going to GHS. All right. So that's easy. And I never had the opportunity of leaving Nassau until I was 16. And so I have very little experience with going to the Family Islands. Those experiences came later in life, in my 20s and what have you. So gentlemen, you all could take it away with the interesting stories.
Well, I'd like to say, yes, we travel on foot, but there was a difference in traveling on foot, because back then, shortcut was everywhere. No yard was fenced in. I would walk from Augusta Street to Nassau Street in almost a straight line from my house. You just go through everybody's yard, cross the road, next set of yard, cross the road, next set of yard.
That's right.
That's how we moved about back then. Right? Next thing, other than taxi number 11, you were fortunate if you had Union 5 skates, or if you had a scooter or a bicycle, or when your skates start to break down, you take the wheels off and you make box cart. So either way, those were our modes of transportation here. I was fortunate enough in 2 summers to work on the mail boat going to Mastic Point. So that was an experience in itself, getting to see a different part of the country and traveling by sea. And as mentioned, when it's roughly in trouble, in your first experiences, you got to learn how to be able to keep your food down. Or other than that, you wait till the boat reaches where it's going, and if something leaves, you get something there.
As you are aware, most of us Caribbean people have similar experiences. In small islands like Barbados, where we don't have an archipelago, we just have an island, we walk like the other fellows say. And then when you become 10 or 11 years old and your mom or your dad want to give you a little treat, they bought you a bicycle. Well, my high school days were days when I used my bicycles. They mess up one, my mom bought another one. But bicycle, after you walk, the bicycle was the thing. The one other thing we did was, I lived in St. Philip, which is 11 or 12 miles away from Bridgetown. And my friend, my best friend, and I have to make a decision. Either we catch the bus home in the evening, or we go to the movies and walk from St. Michael to St. Philip, 12 or 14 miles. So we go to the movies and we decide to walk home. And we got home maybe 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning. And you went to sleep and get ready to get to school next morning. So these were interesting times for boys and girls of the Caribbean. My problem was boats. I was never a boatman. I came from Barbados after a recruitment in 1955. You can multiply how many years ago that was. 20 of us were recruited. Out of 300 or 400 young men who had turned up for the recruitment. I always say to my wife, maybe let me think back. It could not be just a plain coincidence. It had to be God's move in my life that out of 200 or 300 men, my friend and I came down to the last 20. When we got to 100, we looked at each other and said, it looked like we're going to be there. When we got to 50, we were there. And we were selected among the last 19. But I have a sad story to tell you. The last young man to be selected was a 19-year-old chap who had a little problem with his eyes. Fortunately, for some of us, we don't have problem with eyes. I see these young fellows reading with glasses. Now, I read all the stuff we did earlier without glasses. I read this whole thing without glasses at 90. He had a little problem with his eyes, and the doctor sent him backward and forward for 2 weeks, and then decided to give him an opportunity to come to the Bahamas. He made the 20th man in the selection. We came on a boat, a motor vessel, 7 days from Barbados to Nassau. And I promised myself I would never see my birthplace again if I had to go on a boat. 7 days of vomiting, 7 days of starvation, 7 miserable days. And then somebody said, we're in the Bahamas. I said, hooray, praise God. Fella said, we're in the Bahamas, but we're in Nassau. we somewhere over by Lutra, so we wouldn't get to Nassau until tomorrow morning. But we eventually got to Nassau. First day of April 1955, I reached Nassau. 21 years of age. Our 19-year-old comrade was with us. he chose to ride motorcycles. He was a very brilliant young man. His name was Blackett. One afternoon, leaving traffic division to come to Village Road for his supper, he rode along Shirley Street and rode smack into the back of a broken down truck and broke his neck. The last of us to be selected, the first of us to leave the country. That was a sad story for me. My next terrible story is I had the gumption to arrest George Roberts' son on Bay Street when he abused me one day. Now, if you ever heard about George Roberts and them, they were the Bay Street boys. They owned the country. George Roberts went to the governor. You must send that Bajan boy back to Barbados on the first ship leaving for Barbados. The governor said, no, send this file to the Attorney General's office and put this young man before the court. Many of you would not have heard of L.B. Johnson, who was a lawyer and an ambassador for the Bahamas and an acting magistrate at the time. He went before the acting magistrate, L.B. Johnson. He pleaded guilty to 4 charges, and L.B. Johnson gave him a good tongue lashing and said to him, every police officer is a servant of the court, just as you want to be when you become a lawyer. Now learn to behave yourself, go back to London and finish your law degree, which he did. Now, they're touching me saying my time is up, but my time can't be up yet. Let me tell you something. My next bad experience with the sea is going to happen when they decide to banish me from New Providence to Abaco. 1959, my wife had a little baby who is now 65 years old. And she was pregnant with my son, who is 63. And she had one other baby on the boat going to Abaco. That was me. Because from the time the boat left Nassau until it arrived in Marsh Harbor, I was vomiting and lying in her lap. 95% of the baby napkins were thrown in the sea with my vomit. But when I got to Marsh Harbor and got off the boat, I was in good shape. I'll tell you the rest of the story later when they stopped pushing me in my back, telling me that the time is up.
Oh, 2 of my hands are on the table.
Hear the story? I ain't tell you a story yet, but I can tell you a story. You.
Yeah. I know you will.
What were the primary learning tools and subjects while in school?
Well, for me, initially, the primary subjects were the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And fortunately, I excelled in primary school to the point where I took the common entrance and passed that. But actually, I wanted to go to government high and I was too young. I was 10 years old. So they wouldn't let me go to government high. So that's how come my father decided. I was top of the class, and yet I was too young to go to high school. So my father said, but you ain't gonna repeat a class that you've already excelled in. And I ended up in St. Andrews. I wanted to add that I never had a problem walking from St. Andrews in Yamacraw home to Baintown. I only now when I think with it, I think it's far. When I was a kid, that was natural. School out, you walk home. How's it? You know, but before we we did not have no calculator. Before the calculator, we eventually in high school, we had the slide rule. And before that is literally you mentally do your multiplications and divisions, subtractions, and additions. So when we talk about what we had, literally, it's your brain power. You learn your what they teach you in school, and you memorize it to the point where you don't even think about it. And I thank God for that, because even actually now, you give me a set of figures, I could add it up faster in my head than you could add it up on your smartphone. Because that's what I've always did. That's what I became used to in my younger days, and even with a calculator, still do it.
Okay, well, John and I had the privilege of going to an air-conditioned primary school, Stephen Dillett Primary School. No, but a lot of AC. I freeze all my days until the air condition breakdown. I believe we were in grade 5 or grade 6. All right. But let's see. I mean, what were the subjects? I don't know. I didn't do too well. I didn't do too well in primary school and what have you. I think I woke up in junior high school, started doing better. But I guess what you want us to what you want us to do is reminisce on some of the things that we had. I remember we had the what they call it now, the overhead projector. You remember that, with the transparencies and what have you? And we thought that was, I mean, high tech. We also had the I don't know what you call them, some type of rotary slide projectors where they little squares and they put them in a circle. Yeah, and they told us the story of you know, the three little pigs and the you know, all those other stories and what have you. One of the things that I really enjoyed in my days at Stephen Dillett is once per week they would bring us all together, each pod. We didn't have grades. We had pods. Pod 2, pod 3, pod 4. Okay. And we would have story time. And some of the most memorable times and stories. And I found out after the fact that the teachers were actually making up stories to tell us, and they were very memorable. They were very educational, you know, and you know, so it was really good. And so now, thinking about what we have today and looking back, even in GHS, looking back at things, I remember we had I remember it was called the Gestetner machine, and you had the carbon paper where you had to, they used to write on it. Okay, and then they would put the carbon template in the Gestetner and run off the copies, the exams and all this other kind of stuff. And many times the teacher's hands would be full of ink and stuff like, and nowadays we have this thing called photocopies. And I look back and how did we make it? But we made it, and we made it well. It's amazing how this thing that we know about as computers, that really didn't come about until we were long gone out of high school. Even if you were talking about, let me see, I just remember, I don't know what the terminology was called, but I just remember at Ronald Albury, they used to talk about C prompt, and all of the cash registers, the cashiers had to know the computer code in order to be able to operate the computer, which was, you know, and so it's amazing. Oh, and when Windows came out in what, 1994, something like that, the whole world went wacko. It's like, wow, we could actually use the computer now. So a lot of the things that we take for granted nowadays, and the young people, you know, are sleeping, wonder what in the world they're talking about. It's just amazing. But the lack of the the modern facilities, at least what we knew about, what we know today as modern, I guess helped to make us, keep us together and help us to become more involved. We were more connected in what we were doing. So there's some of the memories.
First of all, was the fact that though you lived in the Bahamas, somebody else lived in Jamaica, somebody lived in Trinidad and Tobago, somebody lived in Barbados, but we all had the same system of education, which the British gave us.
Yes.
Now, today, some people are very derogatory about the British. But let me tell you something. Were it not for those people, we couldn't read today. I don't care what nobody said. They gave us a system that caused us to read, write. When you went to school as a boy in my day, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, you had inspection. You better comb your hair. You better brush your teeth. You better have your fingernails clean. And if you didn't have shoes, your foot better be clean. These were principles that were handed down to us as children. And today, we are reaping the benefit of these things that those people gave us. Don't care what you say about them. Not only that, we criticize the British, but 95% of the legal people in this country are all trained in Britain. They go to London. They have their degrees from London. The problem that we have with London is our jurisdiction for in the courts are poor. I don't know what is happening in courts. I am concerned when a 15-year-old boy can shoot another 15-year-old boy who is sleeping in his bed. I am concerned when 13 and 14-year-old children can be running around this country with guns. These are the matters that concern me. Now, the bishop tell you he was a police officer and he ran into some difficulties. I'm not going to tell you what the difficulties were. His uncle was the commissioner of police. I was the deputy commissioner. And the commissioner said to me, I can fire this boy. I said, no, man, don't fire the boy. Get the boy in there. He said, by God's help, I will fire this boy. So I didn't save him, but now look at him. He's serving this country in a different capacity. So maybe it was good that he fired him. But let's get back to our education. Those of us from the Caribbean know well that as soon as we went to high school, not only did we have our English, we were taught French and Latin. Now, we wonder why would anybody teach us Latin? What are we going to do with it? Well, every English word is a derivative of Latin. I know once I gave a speech and the old doctor is now dead. I can't remember his name. When I was finished, he turned to me and said, did you learn Latin at your school? I said, yes. I said, no wonder you use all them words. I'm well glad that those were the foundation of our days in school. Inspection, cleanliness. What are we doing about it? Recently, I saw a bicycle parade in London where naked people were riding down the street. How depraved can we get? Now we have in London the Privy Council, who has refused to allow us to carry out the law. When I joined the force in 1955, you could tell me how long ago that was. It's been nearly 70 years. If you had one murder a year, we were petrified. Today, young men are standing up outside your house waiting till you come out that morning to kill you. Where are we going? What is happening in these countries? Who is going to take us back from the brink of destruction? You tell me, I don't know.
Thank you so much. As a child, what was your favorite hobby, toy, or game? Favorite toy, hobby, or game?
I like that one. I like that one. So I'll speak to that one. My favorite hobby as a boy was skating. We had the Union 5, and then later came the roller skates. And with the Union 5, the joy of skating was coming down Hawkins Hill. Now, if you could come down Hawkins Hill on your Union 5 without hitting the ground and rolling, you were a skater. So that was one of my claims to fame as a young boy. I used to come down Hawkins Hill every day literally of my life with my Union 5. Now, I didn't buy a Union 5. My neighbor, when he bought his son a Union 5, Mr. Sanders, God bless him, Wendell Daddy, he brought me me and Wendell Union 5s together. Because Wendell couldn't skate, so I had to teach Wendell to skate. So when I came down, Wendell came behind me, and I had to block him as he spun over a couple of times. And then the roller skates came in. So we had roller skating clubs in Nassau at that time. And we used to roller skate all over Nassau. And then we used to gather in places like City Market, parking lot here up on Village Road. That was our skating rink before they opened one in the Golden Gate Shopping Center, where it was Skate World. And so I took over Skate World. I was the dance champion in the Skate World for plenty years. But that was my favorite toy. And before roller skate, the other thing was slingshot.
For me, my hobbies were reading. I used to like to just disappear from this world through reading all the books that my father bought me. And he would make sure buy me books, and I would just go off to the point where I would live out what I read. So Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, yeah, I lived those out. I could remember one time, you talk about the glass washboard, I could tell you a story. We were playing, and I break my mother washboard. And my oldest sister and brother, they just start telling me what mommy could do to me when she get home. Because my mother used to like to beat. And in my mind, I can't take the beating that my mother could give me for this washboard. So literally, I got a pillowcase. I put some clothes in it. I tie it up on a stick. I put that on my shoulder, and I start heading out. My father, and this is at night, my father pull up on the side of me on Meadow Street and Augusta Street. And he say, son, where you going? And I tell him, I going on Long Wharf to kill myself. He say, boy, get in this car. So I got in the car, went back home, and my father beat my brother and sister for causing me to be so afraid to leave home. And then he worked in the hotel. He had to go to Wake. So now he going to Wake. Now, mommy still remember that washboard. So she coming at me, I crawl under the bed. Every time she try to get me, cause you know them bed was heavy back then. So you know how it is, if they can't get to you. My mother grabbed the Johnson baby powder tin, you know, baby powder used to come in a metal tin back then, right?
Yeah.
And she threw that at me, and sure enough, it hit me across my eye, got the scar to this day. And my father to come home from work and take me to the hospital, so he wasn't too happy with my mother either. So, but that's, you know, I read and read and read. That was the thing that I loved growing up.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. I don't know what you're laughing at. Yeah, so basically I grew up as the only child. And so I just had my world of imagination, playing by myself in the backyard. Some of the most high-tech things I did, I used to build my own house. You know, a lot of board and stuff around the place. So you build a little house and, you know, that kind of stuff. And so playing with whatever. I mean, you know, listen, from time to time, I used to get interesting little toys and what have you, but it's amazing how there wasn't anything as interesting. You know, one of the most interesting toys to me was just a stick. Because with that stick could become anything almost that you imagine it to be. So your imagination is one of the greatest things that, you know, that I could have, rather than buying things out the store all the time. Because a lot of, well, mom used to complain that I used to destroy all the toys and I used to change the things into what I wanted them to be anyway. So, so why buy all of these high-tech things, you know? Imagination is the greatest thing.
I was telling him just now, I said, imagine you have a stick. You bring that into, that could become drumsticks. All right, that could be used up for sword fight. We used to imitate the Church of God, the Prophecy drum major. So that became our marching band. So a stick was a lot of things for us back then.
Imagination is key. I must chime in on this.
We also, Miss Sodaishaw, at some point, we take the bicycle rim and use that for hoop with the hanger, and you run in.
But don't forget rolling the tire too.
All right.
Rolling the tire was something that we did a lot too. The tire from the car, you took the hub out and you rolled that all around Nassau.
And to tell you the difference between me and John here, when I was little, I didn't even know where Hawkins Hill was.
He wasn't allowed to come outside. That's all it is. We live like 6 houses from each other.
Imagination is key, I must confess. My dad bought me every type of Barbie doll possible, because I love Barbie dolls. But my favorite toy was a box. Hello? Sorry. Okay, thank you. Yes, I said my father bought me every Barbie doll possible because I love Barbie dolls. But my favorite toy was a box. My dad brought home a box from a refrigerator, and that was a 2-bedroom house with a kitchen, with windows, a door, curtains.
That's where creativity.
Hello? Imagination. All right. So let's take it back there for our children so that they can have fun and use their imagination and creativity. Describe for us the place where you grew up, physical structure. What was the house like? And any community notables in your neighborhood?
I was born in the countryside of Barbados. I was born in St. Philip. And not far from the sea coast. We had a 2-bedroom, and in those days, we all had wooden houses. And most of them had a shed. Some of them had a kitchen off, and some of them hang a little kitchen onto the shed. Well, since I was the only child in the house, I had the run of the house. Today, we are petrified when we hear that storms or hurricanes are on the way. But I had hurricanes in 1934, 1935, 1936, all these years. We just closed down the house. We just got on the inside. Your mother made some hot chocolate with the dumplings dropping it. And that was a big pot full of that. My father had cows. So like I told you before, what would churn milk, would fill the demi-dons with milk and churn milk and make our own butter. When you pour that off, the stuff you go in the food store now and buy, I don't know what to call it, buttermilk. We had buckets of buttermilk. We skim our butter off. We put our butter aside and we drank the buttermilk and gave our friends. Like I tell you, I haven't drank a pint of milk since I was 14. These were, and the hurricanes came and they went, they passed over the house. The house normally used to leak anyhow. You got the window closed down, the doors closed up. You can't stop the wind from blowing and shaking the house. But when the hurricane go, you open up the house and the hurricane is gone. Now the hurricanes are blowing down the stone buildings. They're blowing down everything. They're blowing down the trees. They're blowing down the electric poles. They're blowing down everything and killing people. Yes. When I was a boy, hurricanes didn't used to kill nobody. But they used to be here. They used to come. But there we are. I experienced many a hurricane as a boy. Many a hurricane. And they just blow away. Well, as you know, Barbados is in the geographic center of hurricanes. It's out there in the sea by itself, just off the west coast of Africa. And as soon as the Sahara dust and the winds and the hurricanes blow, they usually pass Barbados first. Sometimes it breaks to the north and come to the Bahamas. But Beryl didn't do that. She went straight over and she destroyed many of the other Caribbean countries. So I get signal that I better shut my mouth, so I finished.
Just to piggyback on that question, I lived in a one-room house as a child. Okay, this is why you look at me like that. I never lived in a house with an indoor bathroom. She said, what is a one-room house? A one-room house is where you have the kitchen over there, and then you have the bed over there, and you have the sofa right there. All right, you got that? So my mother had two children, me and my sister. Well, we had three, but my oldest brother lived with my grandmother. And so my mother and my sister slept in the bed, and I slept on the floor. And the exciting thing, I had to scrub that floor every Saturday with the sieve. And after I finished scrubbing that floor, I then had to walk down to Palmetto Avenue to scrub my grandmother's floor. Yes, I had to scrub that though. It did not matter. And my grandmother was waiting for me by 11:30 on Saturday morning. I better be there to scrub that floor, all right? And so, one of the things that I always laugh about, Deputy Commissioner, was when I joined the police force, I was living on Washington Street, and I was living in a house with an outdoor toilet. So I met this girl, and I fell in love with her in training. And you know, I wanted to take her to church with me. So I took her home after, and they let us know. I said, come by us on Sunday, and we'll go to church together. Then she got to us, guess what? She wanted to use the bathroom. I don't have a bathroom in the house. So I had to take her to the outdoor toilet where you had to walk in the back with the carbolic acid and throw it in afterwards, right? And she had to use that. You know, she ain't talked to me after that, right? That love went away so quickly. So on my first salary from the police force, I went to the bank and put down a down payment for home with a bathroom. And my mother lives in that house today. And so
For me as a child growing up, actually, it was quite different because my father built a very nice home in Baintown. We had a cinder block concrete house amongst a lot of clapboard houses. The only thing that we didn't have initially was there wasn't no bathroom. There was a space for it, but I know as a young boy, we used to use the toilet. And eventually my father built a bathroom, closed up the toilet, and turned that into his tool shed. But we had everything in our house. Initially, there were 2 bedrooms, a front porch, a back porch. And there were 4 children. When the 5th child came along, my father put the 2 boys, he closed in the back porch and made that a room for the boys. The girls and him and the front part of the house, all at AC. The boys had fun. That's how come, if you notice, I'm very conscious of fans, because all my life I've learned how to use the fan I call fans poor man AC. You buy a box fan, you tie that in the window, it pull in the draft at night, it cool down the place. I know that air has to go from somewhere to somewhere. I'm an expert on cooling just from a child, because the boys did not have AC. We had fan. But I figured out how, and then afterwards, eventually I even figured out if I leave the kitchen door open and put the fan in the kitchen door, we suck the AC from the front room into the bedroom. But because the girls had AC, but the boys didn't. But we had everything. We were one of the first to have TV, and we were one of the first to have phone in Baintown, one of the first to have car, because that's the mentality that my father had.
Okay. Yeah, so 21 Crooked Island Street. It's interesting how you learn about things after the fact. You know, you don't realize them when you're coming up, but I learned after I'd grown up that my mother had a vision. My foster mother had a vision. Okay, so when she adopted me in 67, I was 2 years old. The place that they lived in West Street was very derelict. And she had a vision that she didn't want me to have any memory of that place. And so her, along with her friend at the time, Campbell Simmons, they went to the bank. They got a place. They got a place in Crooked Island Street. I believe that was called Angliston at the time. And so it was a pretty nice place. Two bedroom, of course, indoor toilet. And see, the thing about it, I believe I used to pick up on some hateful looks from the other boys in the neighborhood, because what we had this, see, the house looked bigger than it really was. Okay, we had this, anybody know what I mean when I say play window? You know, like, yeah, to the living room. It's a big clear glass, all right? A big clear glass. And of course, and then also we had a carport. Okay, it was an open carport, but still it was a carport until my father, over many years, he filled it up with a bunch of car parts. You couldn't get anything, you couldn't get any car in there. The only thing he did, he took a freezer and he used to keep fish in there, and we used to sell fish from there. So it was considering that it was the 1970s, it was a pretty nice place, and thank God I had that experience and what have you, not remembering what my mother would have remembered from West Street. Those days. Um, and so I think it was not all of that, but thank God my parents, my mother was a retired, disabled live-in maid. Okay. My father was fish vendor. Okay. And it's amazing what they were able to get done with little or nothing, just trusting in God.
Amen. Thank you so much. Give our panelists a round of applause for our halfway mark. Right now, we'll have a brief intermission with a musical selection by Silvana Mackey. Give her a round of applause as she comes.
Come on, girl. Turn around.
Okay, Savannah's gonna sing instead. And so she has a lot of gifts. All right, so drop down that curve. Let's see.
I have a very big God, a very big God. Oh, He's always by my side. He'll never leave my side. A very big God. I have a very big God, a very big God. Oh, He's always by my side. He'll never leave my side. A very big God.
That's it, Mayani. Go ahead. Very big.
It is a very big God, A very big God, oh. He's always by my side. He'll never leave my side. A very big God.
Good job, good job.
So I don't know how many of us have options. When we can't do one thing musically, we do the next. So hey, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Savannah.
Thank you so much, Silvana, for that musical selection. And did you know that Silvana participated in the Battle of the Bands for the Independence celebration, and she played her trumpet. So give her another round of applause. She could sing, she could dance, and play the trumpet. All right? Awesome. And preach. Okay. So moving right along with our questions, when we are approaching our 2 to 3 minute mark, we're going to hear a little music playing that will indicate to us that our time is winding down. So the louder the music plays, we'll have that hint. All right? What was training? What was your training for your career like? What was your training for your career like?
In 1945, when the Second World War was completed, many of the demobbed officers who came home decided that they wanted to wear some form of uniform. So they joined the prison service, the customs, immigration, but primarily the Bahamas police force. And they brought with them a level of discipline and conduct that had never been seen before in the organization. A high level of discipline. Our training began with morning exercises, runs, other exercises on the field. We ran to the beach. We ran around the island. We ran to the Western Fort. We ran to Montague and back. And then you have a shower, have a breakfast. Usually, there was an old man from the army called Old Saunders. He would have stew fish or boiled grouper, grits, and Johnny cake, which I loved. After breakfast, you return to your room, make sure that your room and bed are tidied, and we headed for the classroom. My squad had an old Barbadian who lived in Guyana, an inspector called Ali, who taught us law and police duties. We had 6 months of this. We also acted as firemen because we did not at that time had a separate fire department. You had 48 hours of work, 24 as a police officer, the next 24 as a fire picket. You stood by, and if there were fires anywhere, you mounted the fire engine and headed for the fire. That would soon change when an English officer was appointed commissioner of police, and his name was Colchester Williams. When he saw the state of the police force, he was amazed. He had been serving in Barbados as a superintendent of CID, and he came to the Bahamas as commissioner, and he started the upgrade. We never had vehicles for patrol. We had our feet or bicycles. But he sent to Britain and he got cars. He went to the back of police headquarters and he built several buildings, new buildings for dormitories, a commissary, and he asked the government for the old prison, which is located at police headquarters, which he changed into stores and police dormitories. The bottom of that building was used to secure all the vehicles when there were hurricanes, and we had the police stores in it. One strange thing was the death room where people were executed was changed into our computer and our area for communication center. So this entire building was utilized by Colchester Weems. He built a new mess center for senior officers, and he opened other centers for junior officers and constables. So he was on the move to make the Bahamas police force a sort of modern police force in the late 50s and early 60s. Regrettably, his career was destroyed by vicious people and the Bay Street Boys when he refused to bow to their wishes. They had a commission of inquiry and he was destroyed. But remember, you must be careful how you destroy people. The man that took his job was one of Her Majesty's Inspector General. And he was given a salary of twice the commissioner's salary to come to the Bahamas and run the Bahamas police force. 1973, Lyndon Pinlin told him, "It's time for you to get back to Britain. Don't let me have to send you. Just resign and go." Because he was caught in a scheme connected to Grand Bahama and Freeport. And he resigned and left. I can't tell my stories because they keep telling me my time is up. So that's one story of the progress of the Bahamas police force, which in 1973 became the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And by the way, the last thing I'm going to tell you is, I am alive 51 years after I took the first Independence Parade in 1973. Most of the officers after that are gone, and all of the senior officers who were with me are dead. I can only think of two deputy commissioners, John Roll and somebody else, who are alive. All the others are in their grave. 1973, I did the Independence Parade. And when I get a chance, I will tell you of CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting that I wrote and managed in 1985, and then was made a deputy commissioner. But they tell me my time is up, so I go.
And I was actually there with him in 1985, as I was the bodyguard for Rajiv Gandhi. Yes, sir. Was there during 1985. So my training began when I was about 3 years old, 3 to 5 years old. I started actually dancing. I started playing the drums, and I started actually singing. Growing up in the Church of God of Prophecy, you had to learn, every young man had to learn to play instrument, or you wasn't going to be a member. So I couldn't blow any instrument. I couldn't play any keyboard, but the drums was my favorite. And then going to Cat Island, I had a cousin by the name of Uncle Sam Webb, who, if you ever heard of the Cat Island Mites, which is what the top rake and scrape dance group from the Bahamas, who traveled all over the world. He was actually my cousin, and he taught me everything that he knew when I was 3 to 4 years old. And so I started very early in the area of the arts. When I joined the police force, because I didn't have the money to go to college. I wanted to go to college to study the arts, and my whole concept for becoming a police officer was to get the money to go to college, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. But after being fired from the police force, it seemed like God just put a major gift and anointing on me for the arts. I don't have any degree in dance. I don't have any degree in music, but God just put a gift on me, and I have been choreographing the Independence Celebration from 92 to 2021. When you see the 100 dancers out there with all the flags and the streamers, that has been me. I've been afforded the opportunity to travel all over the world, teaching Bahamian folk dance, teaching liturgical dance. As a matter of fact, now, at the 30th of July, I'll be going to China to conduct a workshop on Bahamian folk dance in China, representing the Bahamas government. There's no, and so how did this all happen? Because of the anointing that God has placed on my life and the gift that He has given me. As a matter of fact, I am the only police officer who's allowed to dance in the police in concert. And they had, I was only there allowed to dance. And so, and of course, now there are churches who don't believe in dance, but they call me into dance when it's necessary. All right. There are churches who don't have a dance group, but if they're having a special event, they call me along with my wife. Of course, my wife is Dr. Ann Peterson Higgins now, who's also a dancer by profession. And together, we have trained 100 dancers in this country. But that's how it began. It began as a child. And I don't know if anybody remember the song Kung Fu Fighting. That's the first song I choreographed at 6, 7 years old. Everybody was Kung Fu fighting. And the other thing I want to share is when I was in government high school, I met a dance teacher by the name of Edna Wright. Edna Wright was probably the top premier dancer in the country. He took me like a son and taught me everything he knew. When I was in the 12th grade and he got sick, Eris Monker and Neville Wisdom took me out of classes to teach the curriculum of dance in Gabonai as a 12th grade student. So you was right there, but you wasn't in dance, you was on the music side, right? And but that is how my training. I don't have any formal training in dance. I have no degree. There's no certificate on my wall for dance, but the gift that God placed in me has taken me that far.
Okay, I just noticed that you all put me at a serious disadvantage here today. I am the only non-military person on this panel. So I get beaten today. But yes, so John hit on the salient point of this question, and which is training is for lifetime. And it starts with our mothers, and it starts with our home, and it starts as children, because the training that my mother, Gwendolyn Simmons, would have inculcated into me helped me to be able to branch out into the community. When I was in, I was able to look back at my days at Stephen Dillard Primary School, and I could tell anybody, you know, as a matter of fact, when I was there and also all through school, they used to say, "Oh, Aaron, he's such a quiet, well-behaved young man." But I used to tell them, well, I didn't tell them then, I could tell them afterwards because I didn't know what was going on. All right. I was never afraid of the principal. I was never afraid of any teacher. I was scared of my mother. Because my mother said, if she even dreamed I doing stupidness up at that school, she would come at that school. And the last thing I wanted in the world was for my mother to come to the school. One day, I got injured by the silliness of some other child, and my mother came up to the school. And I think that was the last day of my life, because the way how she handled the situation is, she clinched me to herself, and she went off preaching, and she went in the Holy Ghost. Yes. And it happened again. We had a situation at C.H. Reeves, and mom came up to the school, went in the principal's office to deal with the matter. And she got down on her knees and she started praying to the Lord. And, you know, I thought that was it. Okay. But what I'm saying is the things that mom put into me helped me to get through school with behavior and what have you. The things that I learned at Transfiguration Baptist Church in the Royal Ambassadors. Okay, remember the pledge, okay, and the ambassador songs. Those things lay a foundation for life. Now, notice, you all probably, because I'm in music, you all waiting to hear about the music. But I didn't start music until at GHS in the 10th grade and gradually built that up. But the foundations of a Christian foundation, behavioral foundation, cultural foundation were already laid since I was a little child, unknowing to me, because it was my reality. And the other salient takeaway from this thing is that training is for life, because what I would have learned at the various schools helped with whatever came next in life. I didn't go into music right away. I worked at John S. George in the warehouse. I worked at Ronald Albury. I worked at Morris in the sales department and what have you. And then, you know, after I even went to ITC. Anybody could remember ITC? See? Everybody's put BTVI. Okay, ITC. I got a certificate in basic electronics. And so I was not able to follow through in that. And guess where I ended up? I ended up teaching music at Temple Christian School. They playing music on me. All right. And so that was the Lord leading me into music, but still all of those things from early childhood and early church and what have you laid the foundation for where God was leading me. And young people, just remember, it's not about your training for your career in whatever specific area, but just remember, learning is something for life. Training is for life. And as long as we're living, you'll always be learning.
When I finished high school in 1977, I applied to various jobs, including 1 or 2 banks, because my plan was to work for a couple of years and go off to college because I wanted to be a doctor. And so I'm applying for jobs and nothing is happening. At the end of the summer, my mother, my sisters go back to school. My brother's gone to college. My mother's gone to work. I am home by myself. That lasted for about 2 days. My mother comes home. She comes with a form, and she says that she has heard about the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and I'm going to join it. I say, Mommy, I don't want to join Pinland Army. She says to me, you're not staying in this house by yourself. Idle hands does the devil's work. So she filled out the application. Then she puts it in front of me and she says, write your name here at the bottom. So I signed it and got interviewed and was sent off to Britannia Royal Naval College. That was a nightmare. Because my mother actually always says that her boy went off to England and never came back. Because what happens to you with that training is that you go off as a kid and you come back as a man. What happened in England is that I'm a Bahamian man. I ain't used to having to be getting shouted at left, right, and center. Every decision is made for you. The first thing when we got off the ferry to college, they line you up, you pick up your bag, and they march you up a hill to the college. Then all the clothes that you brought, they lock them away, and they give you what to wear. They tell you when you can eat. They tell you when you can sleep. They tell you when you can get up. Every moment of the day is planned for you. And so that was a culture shock to me. And after 4 weeks at it, I wanted to come home. The only thing that stopped me from coming home was that my mother and my aunt had signed a $10,000 bond. If you quit, then you got to pay the government back $10,000. And I couldn't put that on my mom. So I stuck it out. And so getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, the first time I saw snow was 5 a.m. in the morning. I was running in it. It's not a pleasant experience. The first time I saw hail, I was on a boat doing inverse drill, which means you literally have to turn the boat over and right it back up. And it was during a hailstorm. So there are no good memories of it. You're so tired when you go to class, like how, you know, sometimes some of us sitting here and doze off. If the teacher sees you sleeping, you stand up on the desk with a large shell in your hand for the rest of the class. So, but the thing is, it's so ordered and disciplined that it impresses your mind at 18 years old for life, for order. Then they teach you safety. For example, they train you everything about fire, and then they put you in a 2-story wooden building, and they light it from the bottom, and it's your job for you and your friends to get out. So you're so conscious of fire safety and all the things, what to do. Like, and so sometimes even I know the head deacon might find it awkward for me, but I'm uncomfortable with those locks on that door. Because I'm so conscious of the training, you always notice if something is out of order. And you never forget that. But it's for the good. You're able to make quick decisions. You're able to see what is wrong. And you're able to put it right as quickly as possible. Because when you're out to sea, there is no spare tire. There's no help coming when things go wrong. It's just you and the men. And I, like you said, I was an officer. All the men, when something goes wrong, guess who they looking at? They're looking at numero uno. And so you have to make the right decision. And very often you're between a rock and a hard place. There is no right decision. Each decision carries some consequences. You have to decide what to do and make it happen. And it hones your mind to be able to deal with problem after problem after problem right away. And so when the Defense Force, you mentioned what year the police force was commissioned. For the Defense Force, it was 1980 when Princess Anne came down. And whilst initially we thought it was Pinland's Army, the Defense Force is a great thing for young men and young women to join and serve this country because it impacts you, as Aaron says, training and learning, it impacts you for life.
talk about discipline. When the Prime Minister of this country decided that he wanted a defense force for the Bahamas, I was then commandant of the police college, and he called upon me to do the training for the first 2 squads of defense force officers. I'm still meeting some of those men now and then. I think they're all retired, some are dead. But when I meet the fellow, said, Chief, I remember those days at the college when you turned us out. Sir Lyndon Pinley was a visionary. He decided the Bahamas must have a defense force. This amount of water, these islands and keys must be defended by a force. He ordered the police force to immediately transfer 6 harbor vessels that we owned to the commander of the defense force immediately, which we did. And that was the nucleus of the defense force. One other little thing I tell you, a Bahamian hero has been buried today. Deputy Superintendent of Police Noel Thompson died at 93 years of age 2 weeks ago. 1956, I was 1 year a young police officer. 2 Cubans, one believed to be Raul Castro, and another youngster about 16 or 17 years of age, took a boat from Cuba, went to Key Sal, lowered the British flag, and hoisted the Cuban flag. Some of you may remember a judge we had by the name of Maxwell Thompson. His brother was caretaker of Key Sal, and he called the governor of the Bahamas and said to him, look, 2 Cubans have taken over the island. What am I going to do? They're not interfering with me, but they've taken Key Sal. The governor called the colonial secretary in London, and he was ordered to send the commissioner of police and a team of men to Key Sal and take those 2 boys and send them back to Cuba. Commissioner of Police, I am a living witness to this. The Commissioner of Police and a platoon of about 8 men with rifles on their shoulders, I'm looking at them now. They mounted a truck, headed for the airport, went to Key Sal, lowered the Cuban flag, rehoisted the Union Jack, put the 2 young men on their boat and said, go back home. Don't get yourself in trouble. We took Key Sal. Today, the last of those heroes was buried. 93 years of age. Deputy Superintendent Noel Thompson at 93 years of age. Thank you.
And I'd like to say, for those who may not know, Key Sal is a set of small keys in the southwest Bahamas. Very often they don't even put it on the map in general. But if you look at a proper geographical map of the Bahamas, we own an area, part of the Bahamas down there, the Key Sal Banks, Dog Rocks. William would know. There's a few keys down there, uninhabited, that we have to keep a contingent of officers on because it's part of the Bahamas.
Wanted to tell that story for a Bahamian hero who was buried today.
Thank you for sharing that powerful story that most of us may not have known. What was your experience like when the Bahamas celebrated in 1973?
Let's be real now.
What? 1973, I was commandant of the police college. And the commissioner of police called me to his office. And he said, the Prime Minister and I have selected you for the celebrations of the Bahamas first anniversary. Independence, the 10th of July, 1973. What could I say? All I could say is, yes, sir. So I went back to my office and I drew up an operation order and I got my teams together. As you who watch the celebrations realize there are about 14 or 15 platoons of officers on the parade. But at that time, the present King of England was Prince, and he represented his mother, and he came to the Bahamas with two British warships. So they supplied me with 2 platoons of sailors from those 2 warships. And we had a spectacular time on the 9th of July, 1973. Another sad story. We had a police plane that went each morning to survey all the Bahamian islands and the surrounding waters to see if any vessels were being plied through the Bahamas. When the police plane took off on the morning of the 9th of July, 1973, it crashed 2 or 3 minutes in the air just outside the airport. The pilot, a young American, a young white American, was immediately killed. His head was severed from his body. The man who was doing the survey was a police sergeant by the name of Forbes. He was seriously injured. And I was finishing my last rehearsal for tonight. So I had to adjourn and head for the airport. By the time I got to the hospital at Lightfoot Key, Forbes had died. So here is a young sergeant who would not see Bahamas independence, killed on the morning of the 9th of July, 1973. I tell these stories because most people forget that these people have given their lives in the service of this country. I know he had a brother who he left in the force, and I'm not sure that he's still alive. He might be dead also. But here was a Bahamian killed on the morning of the 9th of July, 1973. We leave the airport, back to the rehearsal, and the rest is history. We carried out our duties for the independence celebrations, lowered the British flag for the last time in this country.
Yes.
At 12 o'clock on the morning of the 10th of July, 1973 and raised the new Bahamian flag under my command. I am 90 years and 4 months old, and I'm one of the only survivors of that parade, although there are still several younger fellows who are around, and every now and then, while I was sitting in the back there waiting for this program to begin, a youngster called me. He ain't a youngster now, he's an old man. And he said, Mr. Mason, I need to talk to you. We were on the parade. And I told him to call me sometime later so we could have a good discussion. But I tell you these things because I was there. Commissioner of Police was a Bahamian, the first Bahamian commissioner, Celestial Thompson. The next commissioner would be Gerald Bartlett, and I became his deputy. And when they give me a chance, I will tell you the story of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 1985. He was there. And what we did. And what happened shortly after that.
The only thing I want to add to that is the exciting thing for me with independence was I never spent independence in Nassau until I was 16 years old. But when they were doing independence in Nassau, we had our own independence celebration in Kent Island. And it was held in church because my grandfather was actually the pastor of the Zion Baptist Church in Allenstown, Kent Island. And so all of the churches came together and came down to Allenstown in 1973. And we had our independence celebration in that church. And that service, I was excited because I was the 8-year-old drummer on the drum set in that service. And that night, we praised God all night. We had the region bells singing. We had the BBC singers singing. I don't know if some of y'all may be old enough to remember those groups, J.J. Stubbs and those persons. We had all of them singing that night, the region bells, the BBC singers. It was Alice Monka. These were top singers from Kent Island at that time. And that night, we praised God all night. We praised God until from 8 o'clock that evening until 1 o'clock in the morning. And after 1 o'clock, we started rushing. Now, you know everybody rushing in church? That's what we did. That's how we brought in independence of Kent Island. So we rushed around the church, and you got to have your offering in your hand. Because when you pass the offering bucket, you have to put the offering in. The rest don't come on our rushing line. That's how we celebrate independence. And we did, and I never saw the independence celebration in Nassau until I was 16 years old. That was the first time my mother allowed me to stay in Nassau. And ironically, from there, I became the choreographer for independence celebrations. And so that was exciting to me. But to see the videos of what happened and then able to work with the men like Mr. Mason and Mr. Dopey Taylor, who actually was one of the persons who lowered the flag and hoisted the flag. He became my boss, and he always shared that story. Every morning when we went to work at the Echo unit, we got that story at least twice a week. The Echo unit got that story of how he lowered the flag, and him and Bill Williams, who those two together, they lowered, and we had got that story. So I knew a lot of it from those two men who were once my bosses.
Thank you so much for sharing. Coming now is our pastor, Pastor Raydell Duffus, with remarks.
Well, I don't have much to say, but I am delighted to hear the history of the Bahamas. I learned a lot today. I must say I'm happy because I born in the 73 also. So we have something with the independence in common. Yeah, just some different months, but I born also in the 73. But let me tell you that nothing is best than be free. And I remember my sister-in-law came to the Bahamas a few years ago. She used to work for our organization in Nicaragua, Black People Organization in Nicaragua. You all know Black people is minority in the entire Central America. Costa Rica, we are just 1 point something%. Yeah, 1 point something%. So she came here, and I remember she spoke about the Bahamas, and she said, there one place that I enjoy a lot myself, and I identify myself is the Bahamas because Black people run the country. And that is truth. When we came, it's true. Because anywhere else you go in Central America, we are the majority. We are the minority. White people and the Indian evermore who run business. But here in the Bahamas, it's good to see that, you know, the police officer is, the chief of the police officer is a Black man. The prime minister is a Black man. The boss of the director of the hospital is some Black person. When you go on Bahamas here, the pilot is a Black man. So Black people run the business here, and that is good. That is what the independence, I think, brought here to the Bahamas. And that is something that you don't see. You can go then 7 countries in Central America, and you will never see that. Always a white is who run business. So I congratulate you all for celebrating your anniversary, your 51 anniversary. And also I celebrated my 51 anniversary. So you know what I mean? So if you say I was wearing my Bahamian in solidarity with you all. So thank you all, and I pray that 51 must be just the beginning of the celebration, that God can give us many more years, and that the following generation can follow the good business what you all had tell us today about the Bahamas and your experience. So may God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Pastor, for sharing in our 1973 celebration. Well, our next question is, were you able to attend the ceremony on Clifford Park? And if yes, what was the moment like for you?
I don't go to Clifford Park anymore. My wife and I sit in front of our television and we behave as if we are at Clifford Park. We watch the celebrations and we enjoy them. And we are glad that we are alive to see the 51st anniversary of the Bahamian independence. We're wonderful. Most of the senior officers in my day are dead. I can think of 2 deputy commissioners, one John Roll, who's gone back to Exuma, and there's one other, Strawn is his name. I can't think of Wilton Strawn, a minister of the gospel. I can't think of any other senior officer who was at Clifford Park 51 years ago who is still alive. There are junior men because we had hundreds of junior people with us. The one thing I would like to say before you close out, to tell you of 1985, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. 52 heads of Commonwealth countries, Her Majesty the Queen and her husband, who are both departed, and the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the Iron Lady, who is also gone. And that was another operation put in my hands by the Prime Minister to make sure that we were able to host the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting without any incident in 6 months. He said the last people who did it were the Australians, and they usually have 2 years to prepare for the meeting. We had 6 months, and we were asked to do it, and we were going to do it. We did it. We had some able officers who were put in segments of the job: transportation, security, movement. Able men, drivers. We never had one hitch in Chogam, not one hitch in Chogam. But what was the sad state? The Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi's son, you know, she was assassinated. 3 weeks after he left the Bahamas, they blew his head off in India. How lucky could you be that they didn't kill him in the Bahamas? So these are things that we have experienced during our career, and we need not do anything about else now except to remember them and to tell the young people of them. And I have written a book. And in that book, I have been appealing to young Bahamians to serve their country in some capacity and to serve with honor and integrity. The police force is now fraught with suspicious conduct of some very senior people. That bothers me. There is one officer who was just suspended, who not long ago I told him, I am looking forward to when the commissioner makes you an assistant commissioner. Now, I don't think he'll ever get that now, whether he is exonerated or not. But I appeal to young Bahamians, join the defense force, go to the police force, go to customs, go to immigration, go to the public service. Don't forget, in the 1950s, we didn't have a permanent secretary who was black. We didn't have a colonial secretary who was black. They were all Englishmen in charge of this country. And the white Bahamian was running the country as they saw fit. You took it over, now run it. Let your children run it. And warn them that in so doing, they must display honesty and integrity. Amen. Thank you for listening.
On my part, as I said before, I was 13 years old. My mother took me to the parade, that first parade, and the highlight at that time, well, there were a couple. One was to see Prime Minister Pinland, you know, a black man in charge of the country, and so confident. That was impressive even as a child to me. And then obviously when we raised the Bahamian flag. And then in subsequent celebrations, the Defense Force in the early years, we didn't have a choice. Every single Defense Force officer had to go to the independence celebrations because we were a small force, we were growing, and obviously the Prime Minister wanted the country to see us. So I went to a number of celebrations in succession to the point where I didn't want to, I stopped going after I didn't have to go. But like Pop said, that we watch it on television, but definitely the most impressive part was seeing that we had a Black man in charge of the country. Even because when let's be real, you know, we know that initially the UBP ran the country, and then because of majority rule and dealing with the gerrymandering and throwing the mace out the window and all those things, and educating Bahamians in the Family Islands, that we were able to, being the majority in this country, Black people, to run this country. So I thank God for that word that came up again, the freedom. And I say that because someone just recently just asked me why we really celebrate independence and what is it that we should celebrate about our culture. And I kind of went into shock because I thought everybody would know that, you know, the basic thing is our freedom to choose whichever you want to, and even to worship however you want to worship in this country. Let's not take that for granted. We have a wonderful freedom in this country, and we should celebrate that freedom.
Our next question is directed to Mr. Neely. Describe a day in the life of an educator in the public sector in 2024.
As I keep telling people, never ask me about school. Oh, Lord. Let me read that question because you all don't have enough music in the back there to play if I was to get started. It's quite challenging. All right, it's quite challenging. But you know, what we need to realize as a people, we really need the partnership of the community at large. And we need the partnership of our parents. And as I look at this audience here this evening, if I start talking, I know I'm gonna be preaching to the choir. However, if you all could help us to get the word out that we need partnership with parents and the community at large. Yeah, you just don't want me to start talking about the experience in the school and what have you. It's amazing. Our children, our people don't realize what an opportunity they have. I'm at Doris Johnson Senior High School. It was opened in 2002. Brand new school. It's one of the newest schools, school buildings. But beyond the wonderful facilities, physical facilities, they don't understand that when we started that school, the teachers that we started that school with, many of them have more than 30 years experience. Okay, that's the kind of foundation that we started the school with. And for the children to come and give absolutely no regard to the teachers, give absolutely no regard to the learning opportunity. It's sad. Now, when I say the children, I have to come back and I have to temper my words. Because on one hand, you have, okay, the hands are not the same size. On the smaller hand, you have those children who come to school and they maximize on the opportunity. When you come to our school and you look in our handbook, there are two young people who adorn and demonstrate the school uniform. the young man, and then there's a young lady. Both of them have gone on to do extraordinary things. They started the school in 2002, so they graduated 3 years later. We know the young man, Honorable Fred Mitchell just finished talking about him. He is now, I believe, a plastic surgeon either in New York or something like that. And the young lady, she's gone on to do some great things. We've had a lot of outstanding citizens who've graduated from the school. But on the greater hand, we've had so many students who have just thrown the opportunity away. And so really, that's really what we're needing. We're needing partnership. Okay. We're needing partnership with parents and the community to make education all that it can be and to communicate to the young people what an opportunity they have. I'd like to take this opportunity right before the music starts playing to say we have this thing called National Report Card Day. Does anybody ever heard about that? I'd like to make a suggestion. Why don't we make National Report Card Day national? And if it can be recognized nationally, like for example, church, why don't you, subsequent to National Report Card Day, just take a quick look? And you probably do this because the Adventist Church is very cognizant. You all are very conscientious. Acknowledge students who get who score well on their report cards. Business places, provide some type of incentive, some type of incentive so students can come in and show their report cards if they got all A's or A's and B's or something, and they can get some type of discount or some kind of prize or something like that. And other, on the radio stations, they should be announcing National Report Card Day. Let the children see that going to school and achieving what it is that you're supposed to achieve in school does worth something. Okay. And it's not just a vain routine. Okay. We've got to let them see that. Because those modest BJCs and BGCSEs, the high school diploma and what have you, lays the necessary foundation for the beginning of their career and maybe tertiary education. So that is some of the struggles in the school system.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. We also would like to know what counsel can you give to our students and young adults about education and about choices? What counsel can you give to our students? We have several students in the audience and young adults today about education and choices.
Okay. Well, I'm tired, so I thought I said quite a bit there. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I'm still a little tired. But even from my own personal experience, if the light bulb does not go on while you're in school, one day, somewhere out there in your working career and as you struggle with life, it's going to go on because the realities of life have a way of waking you up. Isn't that right, General Roger? Okay. Yeah. So that's really the counsel. It's very difficult. My gosh, after 30 years of struggling in the school system, it's very difficult to find words to say to young people and what have you to impress upon them the importance of their schooling. But we'll continue to do the best thing we can. That's all I can say for right now. If the light bulb doesn't go on now, something's gonna come along one day that's going to wake you up. And as educators, I believe we make us, there's a shortfall somewhere because we keep talking about, it is important that you get what you're supposed to get while you're in junior school and senior high school. But our people should also remember, once you leave senior high school, that's not the end of the world. Okay, that's not the end of the world. And as a community, let us try to foster lifelong learning. Because even if you got everything in high school, still there's so many other opportunities for learning and advancement that comes after high school. I hate the attitude that we have at graduation where we feel, oh, I finished with that. I finish. But remember, graduation is called the commencement exercise. It's not called the finish exercise. It's the commencement. So let's aim for lifelong learning.
He's not tired at all. Excellent response. How beneficial is the discipline of music in a child's life? And what are the benefits of learning to play an instrument?
Oh, Lord, a massive topic. A massive topic. As we progress as an independent country, it will behoove us to probably look at more mature countries to see how they use music, the arts, and as a matter of fact, all the other aspects of personal development to develop their young people and to develop their citizens. And of course, music and the arts is only one component of that. One of the things, of course, there are lots of things in that question is loaded, but some of the things, some of the salient points, I'd just like to take the opportunity to briefly mention. In the Bahamas, let's say we're talking about piano or string instruments. That needs to start. It's very interesting, even dance. Okay, Higgins here can speak to that. That needs to start very early, 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old, 4 years old. Maxine Mallory, anybody remember the Mallorys? Maxine Mallory was one of my inspiring teachers. Oh my gosh, I can't ever forget her. Inspiring. She told me she played for Elise. Y'all know for Elise, right? She played for Elise when she was 4 years old. She had perfect pitch. Now, if anybody has any idea what perfect pitch is the ability to recognize or to produce any pitch without the assistance of a musical instrument. I don't have perfect pitch. I started music really when I was like 14, 15 years old. But it is speculated, they don't really have any solid information on this. But if the child is properly exposed to music at a very tender age, like, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, they could probably develop that perfect pitch. And of course, that perfect pitch allows the student to go on and really excel in music in incredible ways. And so it is important as a developing nation, we get our students to get in, our children to get exposed to good training as early as possible, earlier and earlier. And also another mistake I've had to contend with our people over the years, we have to do something about this. There's always this big argument about reading music and playing by ear. But really, if we get on the plane and go to England and go to Russia and all those other places and find out, we'll find out the ability to read and the ability to play by ear go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. Putting music to motion. Okay, or putting motion in music, excuse me. All right, and putting singing with playing instruments. I heard my brother or somebody saying earlier that, oh, he plays all the instruments. No, I don't play all the instruments. And quite frankly, I don't put any value in being able to play all the instruments or multiple instruments. To me, there's no value in that. Because I picked up on the adage a very long time ago to choose to either be a jack of all trades or a master of one. And I chose the latter. Okay, I chose the latter. So it doesn't matter how many instruments you play. It matters how many you're proficient in and how well you do a certain thing. So the proficiency, okay, and the mastery is the most important, not the quantity. Okay, so so let us continue as our country, as we progress, okay, as we progress to strive for greater heights of excellence.
Dr. Higgins, can you define Bahamian culture and how does a Christian relate to culture? And what is your perspective on Junkanoo Carnival?
I can start from the bottom first. There's no such thing as Junkanoo Carnival. Okay? The Junkanoo is clothes on, Carnival is clothes off. So there's no such thing as Junkanoo Carnival, straight to the point. Junkanoo is Bahamian culture, Carnival belongs elsewhere in another country. And as a matter of fact, my study of Carnival showed me that in the history of Carnival, the Trinidadians wore clothes in history. They've been copying Las Vegas. All right? So they need to get back to their roots. All right? So that should settle that point. Now, the other question, what is Bahamian culture? Bahamian culture is everything. It's what we do. It's our norms. It's our traditions. It's our heritage. It's what we wear. It's what we eat. It's how we dance, how we sing, how we live, how we honor, how we respect. All of that is our culture. Everything comes under the word culture. It's our norms. It's our tradition. That was the next one. I already answered that one. It was, Mr. Mason, Mr. Mason, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mistake.
What it was?
It was done deliberately, and it should not have happened. So it was not a mistake. It was a deliberate, and I can share this with you. Let me share this with you so you understand. When the Honorable Prime Minister introduced Junkanoo Carnival, that's what he called it, okay? I was actually on the committee when he first introduced it, because working in the Division of Cultural Affairs, obviously they needed somebody who had an understanding of parades to be on the committee. I was assigned to the committee. I said to them, because I understood the Prime Minister's vision. The Prime Minister's vision for Junkanoo Carnival was to not to copy the costuming, but to copy the financial side. It was to copy how we can make money of people coming and buying Junkanoo costumes for the parade. The persons he put in charge were the wrong persons. The persons he put in charge, all they saw what was happening in Trinidad, and they thought they should bring that here. They never followed the true vision, because when the Prime Minister presented the vision to the committee, the vision was not what we saw and what we see now. The vision was creating Junkanoo costumes. People were going to purchase the Junkanoo costume, thus the Junkanoo groups and the Junkanoo persons were able to make money. That's what it was all about. It was supposed to be them dressing the same way we dress in Junkanoo now with the costumes. That's what it was all about. We had persons who came in, who we put in charge, and they went haywire. And that's how we got where we are now. And when the government changed to the Free National Movement government, they stopped putting money in it. And so it started to go on the down low, because now they had to go and find money for themselves. This government has done the same thing. They have not put any money in it. So I figured every year the parade is going to get smaller and smaller. In a little while, it'll soon be gone, because it doesn't belong here in the first place. That was small compared to what it used to be. Oh, yeah. Yes, I agree with you.
Don't need no carnival. Carnival, I'll explain. Carnival.
Yes, Carnival. Yeah. So the other question was, how does Christians create the culture? That was the other question.
How does a Christian relate to culture?
Well, let's put it like this. The church in this country is supposed to depict the culture of the country. My problem is the church is allowing everybody else to depict the culture. All right. Our preamble says our nation is built under a bond respect for law and Christian values. Am I right? So the church is supposed to depict the culture of the country. The problem in our church, in our country, is the church has become the point where we just go to church and we forget about everything else we're supposed to do. Let me give you an example. So when this government, for many years, I was responsible for the Junkanoo parades and whatnot. When this government came in, they decided they wanted me to do something different. So I got a call from the Prime Minister. He told me to come to meet with him. And he had my minister and my director of culture was there. And he said to me, I want you, in 2023, this was last year, he said, I want you to introduce a national boys program. This was a mandate from the Prime Minister. And I was saying to him, what do you want? He said, I don't know. I want a national boy. He said, but you, one, you're a pastor, one, you're a culture man. You go figure it out and come back and tell me what you're going to do. So right away, I decided, well, I have to go to God and hear what is God saying. So I spent time in his presence. He said to me, listen, the first thing you have to do is teach our young men Christian values. How are we going to do that? He said, you got them in the Simpson pen. You got them in Program Shaw. You have them you have the ladies at Willoughby Pratt. You have the boys also in the prison. Start with them. So for the last 2 years, we've been going to these places, teaching these boys the things that we've lost, the Christian values and the abiding respect for law. And the first time we're teaching the boys who are running around with guns this. You see what I'm saying? And so after that, I said, God, where do I go for you? He said, now what you're going to do is you're going to teach him about business and you're going to teach him about leadership. I said, okay, so I'm going to gather the men who have those skills. Please come, help me. Teach these young men about leadership. Teach these men about business. So when we teach them about leadership and business, what are they going to lead in? What business are they going to be in? So I found some men, because every step I asked God, what should I do? And he said, okay, bring in the carpenters, bring in the masons, bring in the landscapers, bring in the small engine repairmen, bring in the mechanics. So at these programs now, we have these things being taught. So we have these boys now, when they come out of Simpson Pen, they can find a job. They can own their own business, because we have already gotten some of them who turn 18, we've gotten their business license for them. So now they own their own company. But that's what the church is supposed to be doing. It can't just be about standing by the pulpit and preaching on a Sunday morning. We have to set the culture. We have to set the thermostat for this country. That's what the church needs to be doing. Now, we talk about Christian and culture. The church is supposed to be in everything in this nation. All right? People ask me, why do I do Junkanoo? That's a chance I could preach to thousands of people who ain't coming to my church.
So what you think?
But every time I go down Bay Street, through my costume, I preach the gospel. I
Who
have
said
someone
it?
on the banner
Who said it?
preaching the message of the gospel. I have
Oh,
5,000
yeah,
tracts or
Patty
more,
went in the
and I'm
kitchen.
giving out at every parade. I'm preaching the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what the church needs to do. The church is supposed to set the culture of the country.
Very well said. In your opinion, as we wrap up, in your opinion, has social media, modern gadgets impact our daily lives, and what are the pros and cons for all of our panelists?
Of course, social media has impacted our daily lives. And some positive and some negative. Obviously, just about everybody in here got one of these, right? And so much so that we don't even go to the bathroom without it. That's the reality. We're in the information age. Everything comes across long before it come on TV to ZNS, you didn't get it on your phone. And chances are you get it on your phone uncensored, whatever it is. And sometimes that's frightening when you think about it for our children, because when we were children growing up, you never see them things. And so therefore, your mind never even imagined some of the things that our children are seeing now. So that's the negative side of social media. And everybody won't be the first to get it out there. They don't, and very often we send around things, we forward things that if we was to pause and read, we wouldn't forward it because we don't even agree with some of the things we send in. But we don't take the time to fully read what we're sending. I had to call my sister the other day because she sent something to me and I read, and I called and I said, Melanie, you read this? And she say, well, I say, read it and we could talk about it. And once she read it, she actually disagreed with what she was sending. We like to forward things. We like to be the first one get the news out. We send things that we really should not be sending out. And also, I was listening to a pastor and he literally was saying that his children don't have no phone. And that way, his children grow up normal. They're not overexposed to social media. And so we would, children may need to consider that. And I'm sure it ain't gonna be no easy thing to take away phone, but that's the one thing, you know, for us older persons, we kind of understand because we didn't grow up with all this, so we understand when to use it and when not to use it. But you know, to get your children to go outside and like we started from the beginning and get involved in some physical activity as opposed to being stuck on the computer, the laptop, or the phone is a challenge. Growing up, we played outside. If you like, for me, inside was the time to go read a book. That was it. But other than that, was outside. Social media is very positive because if you want it, you don't have to go to the library. You Google and ... and you can go through everything. If you want to know how something works, YouTube, how does my lawnmower work? It's there for you to watch. But that's if you use it in a positive way. But there's so much negative, and we have to filter out that negative, especially for our children. That's the challenge with social media.
Thank you, Elder Roger. Would each of you just share one thing that we can do to make the Bahamas a better place? Just one thing.
I think that parents should now sit up and recognize what is happening in this country and get their children on straight lines. We are losing too many young people to violence. It is time that our parents sit up and notice what is happening in this country and do something about it.
My one thing is two things. Very quickly. So, okay, maybe three. Very quickly. But we really need to, people, we need to bridge the gap. And there's a disconnect between the older generation and the younger generation. We talk about the effects of social media. Our young people are getting too much influence from all kind of foreign influences and what have you. And if we really look back on how we were brought up by, well, we call it now the old people and what have you, but there are a lot of adages and there are lots of words of wisdom that were imparted to us, and we need to impart it to our young people because we are who we are. And the faith, the trust, the principles, okay, that we were brought up on are the things that our young people need to forge the way forward in their life and what have you, not these strange, weird things and influences that we have coming. And then very quickly, if a piece of advice, if we were to take a close and conscientious look at our national anthem, it would provide some very awesome philosophy for us to move on. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because Pastor Rex Major wrote a very poignant book, March on Bahama Land. How many of us know about that book? Okay. However, if we look at it, and of course the preamble of the Constitution is incredible also. March on to glory, your bright banners waving high. See how the world marks the manner of your bearing. Each one of these lines are incredibly potent, with a lot of guidance for us. Pledge to excel through love and unity. Pressing onward, march together to a common loftier goal. And I believe that is the most potent for me. Pressing onward, marching together to a common loftier goal. Loftier, as we know, means higher. But do we as a people, are we aspiring to a higher level? Do we want to improve ourselves? Okay. We don't want to go down in the doldrums of carnival and gambling and so many other vices that, our people, our government is struggling so hard trying to make money, finding ways to make money, that we're forgetting a lot of our values. But whatever ideas we come up, it should always be a loftier goal. So if we could go back to those foundational expressions, the pledge, the preamble, the national anthem, among other things, we should be able to find great guiding light for us.
One thing that's difficult for me, but I think my issue in our country is fatherlessness. There are so many young men without fathers in our country. Fathers have left them. And I guess it's an issue because I was in the same thing. But fathers have left them. A lot of their fathers are dead. And a lot of them are in jail. So my thing is I'd like to see more men in our nation stand up and encourage our men to take their rightful position as fathers. And I'd also like to see our men stand up and be fathers where there are no fathers in the homes.
Thank you so much. Coming now is Sister Allison with our vote of thanks.
Hey, I'd just like to invite us to give a rousing applause to our panelists and our moderator. We have certainly benefited from a wealth of information and knowledge and experience this afternoon through our panelists, and we're praying that this would make a positive impact on our lives, and so that we are able to now play our role, you know, in a more significant way in the lives of our young people and in each other's lives. So I want to say thank you so much to each one of you who have spent this quality time with us. And we have a token of appreciation which we'd like to give to you. So Elder Leonardo, I'm going to ask for your help, please. And then what we'd like you to do after you receive your tokens, we'd like you to just have a seat on the front rows, and we will have our Vesper after our Vesper thought by Elder Leonardo Ferguson, our Adventist youth leader. So this is for Dr. Higgins. Elder Roger, roll. Keith Mason, my dad. Aaron Neely. And our fantastic moderator, Sister Rachel Ferguson. We have an additional token for you after. So I'll get that to you before you leave. But thank you once again on behalf of the Adventist Youth Department, the Music Ministry Department, and Community Services Department of the Trinity SDA Church.
All right, I understand someone has a burning question, so I'm gonna take one question from the audience to any one of the panelists as we get ready to leave. Anyone has a question? Okay, go ahead. What is a sieve?
Sieve. Oh, sorry. Yeah, what's a sieve? Okay. A sieve is it's a metal piece of wire, and it's like a chicken gum wire. You ever seen it before? No, you never seen it before. It's like a metal wire. You cut it and you fold it, and you use like scrubbing it and floor it. It's like a screen. Yeah, it's like a screen. Yeah, it's a metal. Yeah, I'm trying to get it. Yeah, it's like a metal screen. And you have to scrub the floor. Have you ever seen a chicken gum? Have you ever saw a chicken? Chicken? We gotta get, it's still actually the chicken. Yeah, it's like, it's something like this screen here. Yeah, yeah. So it's something like this screen here. Something like it's something that's a little bit hard. And you use like a scrub the floor. When you scrub the floor, that's gonna be nice and clean. But you gotta get down on your knees and scrub.
All right. One more. Okay, I see a young TJ has a question, you just speak loud for them to hear. Or if you're directing a question to someone, you can just call their name. All right, Mr. Mason, the question is directed to you. You go ahead. How did it feel to be the person in charge at the first independence celebration?
How I feel to be the person in charge of the first independence? Well, thank God. The fact that after 51 years, I'm still alive. I make it known that commissioner at the time was Celestial Thompson, and he's gone. The next commissioner was Gerald Batley, and he's gone. The younger commissioner that was appointed was Bernard Bonamy, and he's gone. And later on, Paul Parkinson was appointed, and he's gone. So it amazes me sometimes that I'm here, but it's God. And I have a wife who story of meeting my wife morning in 1955. I was leaving what was Eastern Police Station, immediately in front of Fox Simonex residence on East Bay Street, a little stone building. It's still there. It's closed up. I don't know why they don't do something with it. And I was on patrol and I saw this young lady riding Vex on Bay Street on a bicycle without a light. This was dark, 4:30 in the morning. And I stopped and I said, you don't have any light on your bicycle. In those days, you may not know the light, but there was a little light with a battery and a button on the top. If you press the button, the light came on. So she said, I dropped in the hole, the light came off. And I said, but where are you going at 4:30 in the morning? So I'm going around on Shirley Street, right opposite Sales Road. There is an Adventist church and I'm a member of that church. We are going to early morning service. So for anybody who's going to early morning service 4 o'clock in the morning, need to be getting married. I married her 1 year later.
That day, in the moment of commanding that parade.
Yeah, that was one of the proudest moments of my life. I was a young officer, very young. I was commandant of the police college, and I was a deputy superintendent at the time. And having been called by the commissioner and given the task to do that, I felt very proud. Today, I'm just as proud. And this is 51 years later. Yes.
I didn't recognize the voice Tony Hadley. But on that day, Norman and I were both there. Now Bahamas, we had a uniform. We were 11 years old. Okay. No, wonderful. No one right here. Yeah, someone's got to do. You're both there, and I don't see a uniform.
Wow.
I'm getting the calls all the time of chaps who were on the parade who were young fellas at the time. I'm getting calls. They remind me of the 10th of July 1973.
All right, so we just want to give the panelists another round of applause and show appreciation. You all were great, but I have to mention it's just I see a hand I'm coming. It's just when you tell a story, Mr. Mason, it's like you trap me in. You trap me and I want to hear more. So I'm gonna call Sister Allison to see if we can talk sometime. Great wisdom coming there. All right, I see. Okay, one comment. All right, and then we will go into the Vesper.
Initially did not answer the young man press thing. You told the story about how you met your wife. I thought that was such a sweet story. Now, for a man, that's nice. I was straight down his story.
What then is
When
the
he
rest?
asked the question first, how did you feel being the first person?
But I told him.
No, you couldn't have you talk about how you met your wife. I thought that was so sweet.
That's why I warn you young people, get to know your country, get to know people in your government, get to know people who run the country, your permanent secretaries, your deputy permanent secretaries, your civil servants, your commissioner of police, your commodore of the defense force, those who run customs, and join one of these organizations and serve with a purpose. Because those of us who have stood around, be proud that we were able to do our service. You know, I've seen many young men executed. That is one of the saddest things you ever see in your life. When you go to prison and you see a man executed, when you come back and just like somebody halfway execute you, you're sweating, you're worried. You say a living man walk on he was executed for what? Because he went down the wrong road. So you young people, this is your opportunity. Take it. Get your education. Read every book you can put your hand on. Every magazine of work, read it. That is knowledge. It's knowledge that you're gathering all the time. Read what's happening in the Yukon Peninsula. Read what's happening in Canada. Find out what's happening in the United States. Find out what's happening in Europe. What they're doing in Russia. Why they're fooling in Ukraine. Find out what is happening in the world. Think about Japan. I have a young man who went to school with Kevin. And he turned up at my house about a year ago. And he has 3 or 4 degrees. He lives in Japan. He's married to a Japanese girl. He left, came back. He asked me, said, could I get something to do? I said, go down to the Ministry of National Security or go to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and see. The Minister of Foreign Affairs gave him a job. He is now the honorary consul for Japan. And he's home with his family in Japan. So you young people, it's all open up to you. Take the opportunity, but serve with dignity and honor. Don't get trapped with these crooks and gangsters. They'll put you in trouble. When they come to you, stay your course, away from them, but serve your country. And one day, we'll all be gone, but you will say, what a wonderful thing I did to have served my country for all these years. Thank you.
Amen. Our short verse thought comes from Philippians chapter 3 and verse 20, which says, for our conversation is in heaven, from whence we also look for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. As we celebrate 51 years of independence, Paul here is admonishing us that we have a greater citizenship, which is heaven. And we have to live like people would live in heaven. We have to serve like how people would serve in heaven, speak, dress, live, work like persons who would want to go to heaven. And like Mr. Mason said, that's honesty, that's honor, respect, loyalty, not just to your country or to your service, but more so to God. So let us be encouraged from Paul's message here that yes, it is great to be a Bahamian, like we say, born, bred, dead Bahamian. But at the end of the day, Paul is saying there's a greater citizenship to hold, and that is one of heaven. So let us live our lives to try to gain that citizenship. So when Christ come, we can earn that citizenship and live with him forever. So we're going to stand and sing our song side by side. We stand. But while we are doing that, just some short announcements from the youth department. Next week, Saturday, is our upside down Sabbath, which means that the divine hour will happen during the Sabbath school time. So when church starts at 9:15, we're gonna have our divine hour service. We have a dynamic youth speaker who's getting ready and prepared to come and give us a word for that day. And then we will have our Sabbath school time at around 11, where the young people will perform a little skit, and we are going under the theme, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can also hurt me." That is the theme for our young people Sabbath school on next week's Sabbath. We are also encouraging you, if you have any clothes, shoes that are still workable, for lack of a better term, we are going to have a grand community outreach, possibly the end of this month, where we will give out some food and clothes and shoes and whatever the case may be. Kindly bring them in Wednesday night. Next Saturday, you can see myself or you can see the community service leader, and she will take those so we can get it washed and prepared for those in the community. We're also going to use that opportunity to share our flyers for the crusade that is coming up and also other related things. All right, so those are just the two short announcements from the youth department for those next 2 weeks. I will not be here on the 27th. I must have a speaking engagement, but we have something planned for that Sabbath as well. But you will hear more about that this coming Sabbath. All right, so let's join hands in a circle as we sing our song Side by Side. We stand. Whilst we're joining, I just want to thank our panelists again. I want to thank Sister Roll for coordinating this wonderful service.
Could you say one thing?
Sure.
Thank you. I want to say one thing, especially to the young people of this church and this conference. Allison is a graduate of Bahamas Academy, head girl and valedictorian. One day, a pastor, an Adventist pastor by the name of Melanson, visited the Bahamas. And I wanted to know from him if I could get Allison to Oakwood College, which is now Oakwood University. He said, certainly. He said, apart from Allison, bring some other children if you can. My wife and I took 7 young girls, along with Allison, to Oakwood College. One of them is now the president of the Senate. And I can't remember all the girls, but most of their mothers said they love the girls to go to Oakwood, but they ain't got the money to go along with them. And say, you don't got to go along with them. Melanson said, as long as I get them to Oakwood, they could live at his house. There's Allison. We took the girls, and what happened to those girls is history. Every one of them, the graduate of Oakwood College, now Oakwood University, including Allison. So you see Allison working in the church. We refuse to allow our children to go to any other school in this country except an Adventist school. I send every one of them there. So you send your children to your own church. Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll sing side by side. We stand waiting on God's command. Side by side we stand, awaiting God's command. Worshiping the same King. Living by His grace and moving up in faith. Jesus himself will see us through. Why don't you meet me in never will join us together? Meet me at the Savior's side. Call me to sing songs together, brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Don't you know that soldiers all are free to go where Jesus leads? We'll fight the foe and we shall overcome. It's our goal to save every soul. Pray that we are will be there. Why don't you meet me? Find out together. Meet me at the Savior's side. Me to and never will sing songs together. Brothers and sisters, I'll be there. Pray that we all will be there. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this wonderful Sabbath that we've had today. We have been fed spiritually, educationally, and now let us not take what we would have learned and been blessed with today and not share it. May we go and we serve and honor you with distinguished loyalty, honor, and respect. May we always remember the words of Paul that, yes, it is great to be a Bahamian, a Bajan, a Jamaican, a Haitian. It's great to have citizenship in a country, but there's a greater citizenship to be rewarded. So help us to live a life that is faithful in your sight. So when you shall come, you'll be able to live with you for eternity. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Announce that tomorrow we will be at 3:00. We'll be here for the exhibition. Thank you very much, Camille. We'll be here for the grand exhibition. A light refreshment will be served, right? And for life will be served. And so we're asking all or as many of us to please come on the exhibition. Bring our children.
Yeah.